a very heavy room right now, and when I say that, I mean it in the best possible way. The experience, the achievements, and the portfolios gathered here, it is second to only the UN General Assembly or the UN Security Council meeting. In fact, if I begin to acknowledge people here, if I begin to mention names and acknowledge the people who are present here, I may spend the rest of the event trying to apologize to those that I may have missed. And with the warmest of respects, ladies and gentlemen, to every distinguished person here, permit me to recognize you all. I'm only a young man. If I try, I may end up, angering some people. Please help me keep myself out of trouble and warmly, very warmly greet you all and welcome you. Please put your hands together for yourselves. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, before we talk this morning, my name is Noble Crosby and I'll be your master of ceremony this morning. There's a man, his name is Ishahu Yaro. Ishahu Yaro was a footballer, and then one day he went out. After he went out, that same day he did not return the same. What happened to him? A bullet struck him in the leg. In fact, it was so severe that the bone in the leg was shattered. At a point, doctors told us that amputation was considered. They wanted to cut his leg off. And after 1, 2, 3, 8 surgeries, ladies and gentlemen, this man has still not been able to walk properly. And he's a father of 4. He has 4 children that he takes care of. The breadwinner of his family. He has a wife. He has people who depend solely on him to survive. Think about that for a minute. The bullet that struck Ishahu Yaro, it happened on the 31st of January 2019. And it happened during the Ayawaso West Wagon by-election. But Ishahu's story did not begin Ghana's problem with vigilantism, ladies and gentlemen. Years before the Ayawaso West Wagon incident, Ghana had seen warning signs. In 2008, in Akwetia, violence broke out around the elections. And when violence breaks out around elections, we know what happens. Ballot boxes were taken, election materials were destroyed. Fast forward to 2015. You remember these names, the Azoka Boys and the Bolga Bulldogs. They clashed during the by-election there. There were gunshots, people were injured, property was damaged. Let's come forward to 2017. Members of the Delta Force stormed the office of the Ashanti Regional Security Coordinator. Ashanti Regional Security Coordinator, and then they forced him out. Later, when one of them was taken to court, supporters stormed the court. And then, when that happened, the accused person escaped. I want you to take a minute to think about that too. This is not just political vigilante groups challenging each other. They began challenging the authority of the state. In that same period, we saw growing concerns of land guards. In fact, there's a police constable who was shot and killed around the Kaswa area. Concerns over land guardism. In places like Kaswa and parts of Accra, in fact, now they are almost everywhere. Amasamai, everywhere. Disputes over land were increasingly being settled, and they were settled not in the courts, they were settled with force. They were settled with machetes, they were settled with guns and violence. So, by the time that Yaro was shot at Ayawaso in 2019, the truth is that Ghana had already seen years of vigilantism, years of election violence, land guardism, and then intimidation. In fact, attacks on state officials were also very present, even an invasion of a courtroom. It is against this troubling national development that Ghana enacted the Vigilantism and Related Offences Act, Act 999, in August 2019. 7 years later, we're here to ask a very simple question. Has the law worked? Today we bring together some of Ghana's most experienced voices in national security, in law enforcement, governance, academia, peace building, you name it. And on behalf of Election Watch Ghana, again, I warmly welcome you to the National Policy Dialogue on Vigilantism. Please put your hands together for yourselves. Well, that was for you. And now I crave your indulgence that we all put our hands together for Election Watch Ghana, the group that has brought all of us together in this room. To the board, the advisors, financiers, staff, and everybody in the value chain, I'd like to say thank you to them. In fact, no election issue escapes Election Watch Ghana. To formally commence proceedings, may I respectfully
بلدنا آمنا مطمئنا اللهم اجعل بلدنا غانا بلدنا آمنا مطمئنا وسائر البلدان وآمنا في أوطاننا ولا تفتنا اللهم ارفع مقتك
آمين
وغلبك عنا
آمين
ولا تؤاخذنا بما فعل السفهاء منا
آمين.
السر الفاتح.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Malaice na murna da wanga taro da ya samu kansa a cikin mu nan.
I am extremely happy and excited for this occasion.
Me yasa nake murna?
Why should I be happy?
Na'am, Allah na cewa wa qulu lin-nasi husna, ka gaya ma mutane magana mai kyau.
Because Allah has said that when you communicate or speak to people, speak in terms that are superlatively good.
Ba abin da muke son kasar mu Ghana kaman zaman lafiya.
There is nothing we most cherish than the peace that we have in this country.
Kuma Allah ya ba mu zama lafiya da mu da sauran addinai Christians duka muna zaune lafiya.
But Almighty God has granted us peace for such a long time, and we, Muslims and followers of all other faiths, are living in peace in this country.
Allah na falkar da mu ne kamar ya halice mu ne daga mutane guda biyu, Adamu da Hawwa.
Allah continues to remind us that as humans, we trace our origin to a common source, and these are two human progenitors, Adam and Eve.
Hawwa Allah ya halice ta ne daga Adam.
Eve was created out of Adam.
Adamu kuma Allah ya shi ne daga kasa.
And Adam was also created out of dust.
Ya sa masa rai.
Then blew into him life.
Mu dukkan mu Christian da wanda ma ba Christian ba dukkan mu uban mu kenan.
Therefore, we as Muslims and Christians and other members of other faith, we have a common father, and that is Adam.
Sannan Allah ya raba mu shu'uban wa kaba'ila.
Then Allah diversified us and made us into different races and tribes.
Ya rarraba mu ne ba don komi ba.
That diversity was done with wisdom and not out of nothing.
Lita'arafu domin mu san juna.
So that in diversity we'll recognize and know each other.
Mu sadar da zumunci tsakanin mu.
And also establish a bond of relationship.
Mu yi gadayya tsakanin mu taimaki.
And there we can also inherit legacies from each other and for enrichment.
Allah bai raba ba mu don mu zo muna gaba ba.
Allah did create us in this diversity so that we be at each other's throat or to be in perpetual war or conflict.
Bai raba ba mu don mu zo muna
It
fada
is not
ba.
for reason of fighting among ourselves that He created us in this diversity.
Muna gode ma Allah Ghana muna zama lafiya muna zama
Therefore, we
lafiya.
in Ghana here are thankful to the Almighty God for granting us this peace.
Inda Larabawa sun fahimce wanga aya da wayansu daban da wadansu daban ba za su fara da juna ba.
If Arabs and other races and tribes across the world would reflect on our common origin, then there shall arise no war or conflict.
Allah bai raba mu zo muna
Allah
fara.
did not make us different people just because He wants us to fight among ourselves.
Ya rarraba mu ne mu san juna mu taimaki juna.
He provided us diversity so that in diversity we will recognize each other and work together with each other.
Muna gode ma Allah da zama mu gana mu da sauran addinai baki da muna zaune lafiya.
We therefore are thankful to Almighty Allah for the interfaith harmony that we enjoy, Muslims, Christians, and peoples of other faith.
Muna zama kujera guda kamar yadda muka zauna ga.
It's always been possible for us to sit around on the same bench.
To Allah kara mana zama
Therefore, may
lafiya.
Allah continue to grant us peace and harmony.
Sauran kasashe da Ghana da kewaye da Ghana da ke kewaye da Ghana duka Allah kawo zama
Other
lafiya.
nations across the world wherein there is no peace, we pray that Allah will restore them to peace and harmony.
Amin. Amin.
Amen.
Amin.
Amen. Amen.
Malice na addu'a sauran hukuma tun daga security agents baki da ke nan ga duka Allah kiyaye su.
Indeed, I want to pray also for all the security agencies, those who are in charge of our national security. I extend my best prayers to all of you that may Allah grant you the support and success.
Amin. Shugaban kasa President John Dramani
We also want to
Mahama
pray for His Excellency, the President of the Republic,
da sauran wayan da da suke
and
taimakon su
indeed
duka.
all His appointees.
Na'am.
وارفعنا ولا تدعنا
Amen.
وارفعنا ولا ترفعنا وآتنا ولا تحرمنا
Amen.
اللهم زدنا ولا تنقصنا
Amen.
وارحمنا ولا تعذبنا
Amen.
وفرج همومنا واكشف غمومنا
Amen.
وانصرنا ولا تخذلنا
Amen.
وانصرنا ولا تخذلنا
Amen.
السر إذا جاء
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا آمين.
أكرمنا ولا تهنا
Amen.
واسترنا ولا تفضحنا
Amen.
وآثرنا ولا تسألنا
Amen.
وحفظنا ولا تلينا
Amen.
فإنك على كل شيء قدير
Amen.
يا أقدر القادرين
Amen.
ويا أسرع الحاسبين
Amen.
اللهم أنت أمرتنا بدعائك
Amen.
ووعدتنا بإجابتك
Amen.
وقد دعونا كما أمرتنا
Amen.
فأجبنا كما وعدتنا
Amen.
يا ذا الجلال والإكرام
Amen.
إنك لا تخلف الميعاد
Amen.
بالسر آمن
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما عملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين آمين 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 سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين آمين.
Your Eminence, thank you so much. Please put your hands together for the Chief Imam, please. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get into the substance of this conversation, it is important to establish why it matters, what is at stake, talk about who is affected, and why this discussion deserves our attention. In a moment, we'll invite onto the stage the Executive Director of Election Watch Ghana, Ms. Rose Austin, to deliver the welcome address. But before that, based on the impact of vigilantism, it has left a troubling mark on Ghana's democracy, from political intimidation to violence during elections and many more. In 2019, Ghana passed a law to stop it. But again, has the law truly ended vigilantism? Or has the problem simply changed its form into something else? This documentary that we are making ready to play for you, it will trace the story from 1992 to present. If the audiovisual team is ready, this is a documentary, a brief documentary of Ghana's vigilantism story since 1992. Since 1992, Ghana has built a remarkable democratic record characterized by competitive elections, peaceful transfers of power, constitutional governance, and respect for the rule of law. But alongside this democratic success runs another, more troubling story. A story of political vigilantism, party foot soldiers, land guards, and mob justice, marked by intimidation, violence, destruction of property, and, tragically, loss of life. This is the story of vigilantism in Ghana. In the early years of the Fourth Republic, political youth groups emerged to mobilize supporters and protect party interests. Over time, however, one of these networks became associated with intimidation and violence. Following changes to government in 2000 and 2008, partisan groups were accused of taking over public facilities and enforcing political interest outside established institutions. By the 2010s, groups such as the Delta Force, Invincible Forces, Azoka Boys, and Bolga Bulldogs had become prominent in the national conversation on political vigilantism. Beyond politics, land guard activities became a growing threat, particularly in rapidly developing communities such as Accra and Kaswa, where disputes over land sometimes descended into violence. And across communities, mob justice continued to expose another dimension of vigilantism, citizens taking the law into their own hands. The killing of Major Maxwell Adamahama in 2017 remains one of the country's most painful reminders of the consequences. The 2016 election and the violence surrounding the Ayawaso West Wuogon by-election in 2019 brought political vigilantism to the center of national attention. The message was unmistakable. When partisan interests begin to compete with the authority of the state, democracy itself is placed at risk. In August 2019, Ghana responded with the Vigilantism and Related Offences Act 999. The law sought to disband political party vigilante groups, prohibit land guards, and criminalize acts of vigilantism. But 7 years on, one question remains. Has the law achieved its purpose? Political vigilantism may be less visible, but the underlying challenges remain. Electoral violence has continued. Land guard violence has claimed lives. Mob justice persists. And concerns remain about unemployment, political patronage, winner-takes-all politics, public confidence in state institutions, and effective enforcement of the law. Vigilantism may have changed its form, but the threat has not disappeared. The cost is measured not only in lives lost, but in fear, damaged property, weakened institutions, and declining public confidence in the rule of law. The real test of Act 999 is therefore implementation. Credible investigations, effective prosecutions, protection of citizens, professional and impartial security institutions, accessible justice, and meaningful opportunities for young people. Ghana's democratic future depends on a simple principle. Political competition must be about ideas, not intimidation. Land disputes must be resolved through lawful institutions, not force. Suspected criminals must face the courts, not mob justice. And security must remain the responsibility of the state. The question is no longer whether vigilantism has challenged Ghana's democracy. The question is whether we have the political will, institutional strength, and collective commitment to ensure that it never becomes part of Ghana's democratic culture. Election Watch Ghana is a civil society organization focused mainly on electoral integrity and democratic accountability, and is leading the charge. Ladies and gentlemen, now that the foundation for the conversation has been laid nicely, we'll crave your indulgence to please be on your feet for a few moments as the National Chief Imam takes his leave, because he has another equally important assignment that he has to attend to. Please, you may take your seats. And I'm sure we've all been blessed by the presence of the National Chief Imam. We'll continue from where we left off as we introduce Ms. Rose Austin to deliver the welcome address. Ms. Austin works at the intersection of elections.
I feel like younger. Are you? Hey, don't do like that. Don't do. You're sure? Okay, but what's influencing never? Oh, it's better than never. It's true. But then, what's influencing your decision?
Democratic processes. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Executive Director of Election Watch Ghana, Ms. Rose Austin, to deliver the welcome address. Please put your hands together for her.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Even though His Eminence has left us, we would still assume that he's chairing this all-important program in spirit. So I would like to honor him by addressing him. His Eminence Sheikh Alhaji Nuhu Shaributu, National Chief Imam and Chairman for this occasion. The Chief of Staff, whose representative is here, Honorable Dr. Julius Deborah, who is also a special guest, the National Security Coordinator, COP Abdul Razak Osman, heads of security agencies, leaders and representatives of political parties, paramount chiefs and traditional leaders, representatives of civil society organizations, members of academia, members of the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all once again. It is my distinct honor and privilege on behalf of Election Watch Ghana to warmly welcome you to this important and timely stakeholder engagement on one of the most consequential challenges confronting Ghana's democratic development, political vigilantism, and the effective enforcement of the law enacted to address it. 7 years after the enactment of the Vigilantism and Related Offences Act 2019, Act 999, we are compelled as a nation committed to constitutional democracy to pause and ask a fundamental question. How effective has this law been in achieving the purpose for which Parliament enacted it? The passage of Act 999 represented a significant milestone in Ghana's democratic journey. It demonstrated a collective national resolve that political competition must never be allowed to degenerate into violence, intimidation, coercion, or establishment of partisan structures operating outside the lawful authority of the state. The law was in many respects a reaffirmation of a fundamental democratic principle: political power must be acquired, exercised, contested for, and transferred through constitutional and peaceful means, not through force, intimidation, or organized political violence. Yet, despite this important legislative intervention, serious concerns remain regarding the implementation and enforcement of the Act. Chair, there have been instances that have generated public concerns about consistency, impartiality, and effectiveness of enforcement. Perception of selective application of the law, particularly where political actors or political affiliated groups are involved, have the potential to undermine public confidence in our security and justice institutions. Whether such perceptions arise from actual institutional failures or from weaknesses in public communication and accountability, they cannot simply be dismissed. In a democracy, public confidence in the impartiality of institutions is itself a national asset. Where citizens perceive the law to be applied selectively, the credibility of the rule of law is weakened. Where perpetrators believe that political affiliation can provide protection from accountability, impunity becomes entrenched. And where impunity becomes entrenched, political vigilantism can become normalized. This is precisely why today's engagement is so important. Mr. Chair, political vigilantism is not merely a partisan or electoral issue. It is a matter of national security, democratic governance, public order, and the rule of law. Its existence or proliferation of political vigilante groups creates the risk of parallel coercive structures operating alongside and sometimes in competition with legislative and legitimate state security institutions. Such structures, Mr. Chair, can intimidate citizens, disrupt political activities, interfere with electoral processes, threaten opponents, and undermine the fundamental freedoms upon which democratic participation depends. When citizens are afraid to participate in political activities because of threat or intimidation, democracy suffers. When political actors believe that the deployment of force provides an advantage over their opponent, democratic competition is distorted. When citizens lose confidence that the state can protect them impartially, trust in democratic institutions begin to erode. We must therefore recognize that the fight against vigilantism is not a fight against any particular political party. It is a fight for the integrity of Ghana's democratic system itself. Political parties may alternate in government. Governments come and go. Leaders change power. However, the institutions of the republic endures. It is therefore in the long-term interest of every political party, whether in government or in opposition, to support a political environment in which no party requires, tolerates, or benefits from organized violence. As a civil society organization, Election Watch Ghana considers itself not merely an observer of Ghana's electoral and democratic processes, but a stakeholder and partner in strengthening democratic governance. Civil society has a legitimate responsibility to monitor, implement, raise concerns, facilitate dialogue, promote civil education, and advocate for institutional reform where necessary. Our collective role today, therefore, is not to assign blame or pursue partisan interest. Our role is to ask difficult questions, to examine the evidence, to listen to the perspective of relevant institutions and stakeholders, and most importantly, to contribute to identifying practical solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, we have gathered here to pursue three principal objectives. First, to undertake a candid assessment of what has worked and what has not worked since the enactment of Act 999. Second, to identify the legal institution, operational, political, and other bottlenecks that may be undermining the effective implementation of the law. Third, and perhaps most importantly, to develop concrete and measurable actions for government, political parties, security agencies, civil society organizations, traditional authorities, academia, the media, and other relevant stakeholders. We should therefore endeavor to ensure that this engagement does not end merely with speeches, expressions of concern, or another communique. We must leave this room with commitment. Commitment that can be followed up. Commitment for which institutions and stakeholders can be held accountable. Commitment that can strengthen enforcement, improve institutional coordination, enhance public confidence, and ultimately reduce the space within which political vigilantism can operate. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Ghana has earned considerable respect for its democratic credentials within Africa and beyond. Our peaceful elections, constitutional transitions, vibrant civil society, active media, and strong culture of political participation are achievements that we must protect. But democracy is not sustained by election alone. It is sustained by the rule of law, institutional integrity, political tolerance, accountability, respect for human dignity, and the peaceful resolution of political differences. If, as a society, we allow political parties, whether in government or in opposition, to resort to, tolerate, or benefit from organized groups that use intimidation and violence as instruments of political competition, then we place the very foundations of our democracy at risk. If political power becomes associated with the ability to mobilize force rather than the ability to persuade citizens, then we will have fundamentally distorted the meaning of democratic politics. If citizens become intimidated into silence, participation will decline. If political opponents become targets of violence, pluralism will suffer. And if the strong and permitted to and if the strong are permitted to impose their will on the weak through force, then the rule of law will gradually give way to the law of the jungle, where power, rather than justice, determines outcomes. We do not want that. We do not deserve that. Neither, as a nation, must we ever accept that. We must therefore summon the collective political will, institutional courage, and civic responsibility necessary to confront and expunge political vigilantism from our democratic culture. This requires action by all of us. Mr. Chair, political parties must take responsibility for the conduct of their members and affiliated groups. Security agencies must enforce the law professionally, impartially, and without fear or favor. Government must provide the necessary institutional and legal support for effective implementation. Civil society must continue to monitor, advocate, educate, and hold institutions accountable. The media must continue to illuminate issues of public interest responsibly and courageously. Traditional and religious leaders must continue to use their considerable moral authority to promote peace, tolerance, and national cohesion. And citizens must continue to reject political violence, irrespective of which political party may appear to benefit from it. Distinguished guests, the preservation of the Ghana's peace and democratic stability is not the responsibility of one institution, one political party, or one sector of society. It is a shared responsibility. Let us therefore approach today's engagement with openness, intellectual honesty, and a genuine commitment to the national interest. Let us ask the difficult questions. Let us acknowledge the shortcomings where they exist. Let us identify what needs to change, and let us have the courage to put Ghana before party, principle before political expediency, and the long-term stability of the Republic before short-term partisan advantage. Our democracy is too precious to be surrendered to political violence. Our peace is too valuable to be taken for granted. And the future of our republic is too important for us to remain silent when the foundation of democratic governance are threatened. Let us therefore move from consent to action, from rhetoric to accountability, and from commitment on paper to measurable implementations. With these, and with a renewed commitment to peace, security, institutional order, and democratic future of our beloved republic, I welcome you all to this important dialogue. Nyefe nyebako, nye akwaba to all of you. Thank you very much.
Ms. Austin, thank you so much for the welcome address. Three things. We're here to assess, we're here to identify gaps or the bottlenecks, and then develop concrete and measurable actions. In fact, if you're thinking, why now? My answer to you will be, why not? Yesterday, the Interior Minister spoke to the media, and in 2019, there's a man, his name is Double. That is also known as, that is alias, but his real name is Ernest Akomia. He's popularly known as Double. He is one of the main perpetrators of the violence that happened at Ayawaso West Wogon, accused to be one of the main perpetrators. But as we speak, 7 years on, Double remains at large. We still have not found him for him to face the courts. If you're asking why now, political parties, they've started preparations for the next elections, for the 2028 elections. So why should the state wait? Why should stakeholders wait until 2028 before we start acting, before we start talking. So I think the foundation has been laid nicely, and we can get into some conversations. Before that, please allow me to acknowledge the presence of some dignitaries that we have here. Some of them would be introduced properly during the panel discussion. But there are political parties present. The NPP is represented here. The NDC is also represented here. PPP, CPP, APC, the NDP, GFP is also here, I understand. United Party is also represented here. GCPP is here as well. And Ghana Union Movement, GUM, they are also here. To all other CEOs and dignitaries who have confirmed and have been able to come here, thank you so much. Mr. Fechi Awono, the MD of BOST, Mr. Edmund Combat, MD of the Tema Oil Refinery, Dr. Sofo Kantanka Rashid Computer, he's the CEO of GIFEC. There's also Wisdom Kweku Deku, the Executive Secretary of the National Identification Authority. Dr. Joseph Bikanyi Koyong, CEO of NADMO, is also here. Mr. Edwiji Tamaklo, I understand, is also here. And Dr. Randiabe is also here. Please put your hands together for the CEOs and other dignitaries who have joined us this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, after the welcome address, it's now time for us to get into good conversations. After the foundation has been laid, it is good for us to start building on the foundation. After the dignitaries have been introduced, it is time for us to know who the chairman of the occasion is. He does not like a lot of introduction. In fact, I was told not to do too much. In fact, not to do anything at all. But he's the chairman of the occasion. We cannot say that we won't give the chairman some fans that he deserves. Our chairman this morning is a man who once summed up his philosophy in a very simple line. There was one day he woke up and he said that national security is everybody's business. Perhaps that tells you something about the chairman. He's a man who trained as a commando in India and in special forces in Cuba. He commanded the 64th Infantry Regiment and then did something that you might not ordinarily associate with a commando. So he was a commander of commandos. After that, he decided to go to law school and then become a lawyer. So commando in training in India, special forces training in Cuba. He's a former commander of the 64th Infantry Regiment, former national security coordinator, and then somewhere along the way he decided that apparently all of that was not enough and then he wanted to be a lawyer as well. But here's something that you may not know about him. Behind the soldier, the lawyer, and the security strategist is a man who has openly confessed to being a Kumasi Asante Kotoko supporter. So for everyone else in the room, this is one piece of advice for you. The chairman of the occasion, he has combat training and then he has legal training. So my advice to you is that please choose your battles carefully. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Lieutenant Colonel Larry Bevlolate, retired.
Thank you all very much. Thanks a great deal for the introduction. I realize if I had left him here longer, he would have been saying more than he should say. So, like I said, my name is Larry Bevlolate. I'm the special envoy of the President of Ghana to the Alliance of Sahel States. I bring you the warm greetings of the Honorable Chief of Staff at the Office of the President, Dr. Julius Deborah, who regrets on behalf of our host, the Commandant and Staff of the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, I would plead that at your instance, I respectfully acknowledge the presence, although he's departed, the presence of His Eminence Sheikh Dr. Osman Nuhu Shaributu, the National Chief Imam, who has graced this occasion as our special guest of honor. My thanks to Baba for gracing this dialogue with his presence and his prayers. Also, our guest speaker for the occasion, the National Security Coordinator of Ghana, the one who actually runs the day-to-day affairs of the National Security Council of this country, Commissioner of Police, Abdul Osman Razak. Our distinguished panelists for the first session, Honorable Kofi Totobi Kwache, Professor George Mayiri Bob Miller, Honorable Francis Poku, and Colonel Festus Abuaje, retired. These are all. Then the second session, actually, Honorable Albert Kandapa, Dr. Benjamin Kumbo, Commissioner of Police Emmanuel Tai Kujo, and Mr. Kwesi Jirinchi of the National Peace Council. You know, all these guys are renowned experts in their own categories. And they are actually national assets in matters of national security, democratic governance, peaceful coexistence, and national stability. So we are so pleased to have them here, and I recognize them with all humility. Now, the Chief of the Defense Staff, his representatives here, I see all the generals, and on the side of the police also, the Inspector General of Police, I see quite a number of his staff here. There are heads of some of our security agencies that I see here, immigration and the rest. So I want to acknowledge also the heads of all the security and intelligence agencies, excellencies, members of the diplomatic corps who are here, our eminent traditional leaders, you know, really dressed for the gate of the occasion. We have the organizers, Election Watch, and the National Peace Council, and all of us. I wish to express my sincere appreciation to Election Watch Ghana for organizing this timely forum and for gathering such an esteemed cross-section of national leadership, security experts, legal minds, and civil society actors. We gather today at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, a venue named after one of Ghana's most renowned international statesmen, whose life was dedicated to peace, diplomacy, and the rule of law. Structures or organized intimidation in our political processes. As chairman of this occasion, I view today's dialogue not as an exercise in political recrimination, but as a vital civic audit. A law on paper is only as strong as its practical implementation, its institutional enforcement, and its ability to inspire public confidence. Democratic governance flourishes only where the rule of law is supreme and where political competition is conducted through ideas, persuasion, and ballot papers, never through force, weapons, or physical intimidation. To ensure our deliberations today yield tangible national benefits, I urge all participants and panelists to approach this dialogue with three core principles. principles in mind. First, we must be willing to examine the successes achieved under the Vigilantism and Related Offences Act 2019 at 999 and the operational, legal, or institutional bottlenecks that persist. Next, vigilantism is a threat to the entire republic. Not just a single political party. Our analysis must therefore place the long-term stability of Ghana above any short-term partisan interest. Furthermore, our goal today must go beyond institutional maturity and the collective wisdom of our people. Protecting that legacy requires constant vigilance and institutional courage. I look forward to rich, insightful, and constructive discussions throughout this morning's panels. It is my singular honor as chairman of the occasion to welcome you all once again and to declare that we proceed with the official business of the day. Thank you, and may God bless our homeland Ghana and make our nation greater and stronger. Julius Deborah, PhD, 25th August 2026, unquote. I thank you for the audience.
So you can follow where we are. Okay, I understand it is. You get it via text. You get the lineup of the program via text message so that you can follow the conversations and then make inputs message so that you can follow the conversations and then make inputs. He has been a presidential ADC. He is a police officer. He is a police officer. He is a security educator officer. He is a security educator here, or he has been a security educator here, so he teaches.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We have started this discourse with equality in the presence of everything. But when I look at this lectern, I don't see the equality for all those of us who are tall. And so permit me, when you see me bending over, to enable me to speak clearly. Mr. Chair, permit me to stand on the already well-established protocols, but it's still important that I say hello to our revered traditional and religious leaders, distinguished generals and accomplished senior captains of security and intelligence, political party representatives, civil society, youth organizations, media, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I say good morning. I am honored to be with you today, especially as this event has brought together all the institutions and persons on whose shoulders the peace and stability of our country rests. Our presence here confirms that the protection of our democracy is not the responsibility of just one institution, political ideology, or sector, or an individual. I wish to also say that we as citizens, security agencies, political parties, traditional and religious leaders, or civil as well as the media, have a shared responsibility to ensure that politics never descends into an organized intimidation or the perpetration of violence against our own citizens we intend to govern. Let me begin by, first of all, indicating that the 999th Act of the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, entitled the Vigilantism and Related Offences Act 2019, is an act that was passed to disband vigilantes groups, including, I repeat, vigilantes group, including political vigilante groups and land guards. This means that the scope is wider than only political vigilante groups. To proscribe acts of vigilantism in the country and to provide for related matters. If we look at the preliminary matters of this act, that is especially section 1, referring to the application, this act applies to an act or a threat of violence. Let me speak a little bit of law here. Section 1, this act applies to an act or a threat of violence or intimidation undertaken by a person or group of persons to further the interests of that person or any other persons affiliated or associated with or connected to or related to A, a political party, B, a political office holder, C, an official or member of a political party, D, a landowner or purchaser of a landed property, E, a real estate developer, a public officer, that is F, or any other person who holds an office of a public nature, G, mining activities, H, a person who engages in any act of vigilantism, and then the 2 says, this act does not apply to a person who lives within same neighborhood or community and whose acts alone or with other persons in concert with the aim of preventing the commission of the offense. All I intend to say is that if your purpose was to prevent vigilantism, this act does not apply to you. Mr. Chair, it is with this preamble that I begin to even attempt my address to assess the Vigilantism and Related Offences Act 2019 at 999. 7 years after its implementation, and I hope that at the end of today's discussion, we would have objectively examined examined the implications of the Act on national security and renew our collective commitment to democratic governance anchored on the values of peace, legality, and public confidence. I will leave detailed examination of the content of the sections of this Act for later discourse or discussions by panel members, but rather look at its implication in general terms. And so I'll be discussing it on certain thematic areas. Let me start by why Act 999. The earliest reports of political vigilantism in modern Ghana traces back to the 1950s during the pre-independence era. Then, over successive election cycles, informal party task forces evolved into organized groups, some with uniforms, command structures, and weapons. What began as a wonderful act of youth mobilization for party visibility gradually degenerated into election-related violence that directly challenged state security by intimidating opponents and disrupting election processes. Election violence is not a routine law and order inconvenience, ladies and gentlemen. It undermines confidence in the democratic transfer of power, erodes trust in state institutions, weakens investor confidence, and threatens the social cohesion on which our republic is anchored. Per the 1992 Constitution, the authority to organize and deploy any state security or force is solely vested in the state. Therefore, any group that purports to assume power outside this constitutional framework, be it by guiding ballot boxes, undertaking armed patrols, seizing property, detaining persons, or intimidating communities, is a direct threat to lawful state authority. Act 999 was therefore a very timely law which was largely in response to public concern, civil society advocacy, and certain unfortunate by-election incidents. Most importantly, it was a bipartisan acknowledgement that political vigilantism threatens everyone, regardless of party affiliation. The law did not merely seek to dissolve enthusiastic party youth mobilization. No, that's not what it was intended. Rather, it prohibited the creation, the organization, the recruitment, the training, the arming, the funding, and the support of such groups in any form or shape geared toward all political acts of vigilantism. This connotes the permission of peaceful party youth fronts and not the usual, if you will permit me to name them, cat lions of some savannah enclave or limping goats of so and so political party, unquote. This is to put it lightly. I like to, at this stage, commend leadership of various political parties who have had cause to defer the protection of their primaries to the police, and in the same vein, show my gratitude to the Inspector General of Police and his men for having taken the opportunity to assert their professionalism so as to win the confidence of the general public. We in the security sector do not take this confidence reposed in us lightly. My second theme I would like to speak about is implementation, assessment, progress, and the remaining gaps we need to work on as far as this act is concerned. 7 years down the line, what are the successes? What remains to be done? An honest assessment will require us to hold our achievements and gaps in one hand and accept genuine criticisms in the other. First, let's look at the achievements. Ghana has recorded relative discipline in election-related security since the act was passed. I use the term relative because of the sub-region in which we operate. Second, the visibility of organized vigilante formations that once paraded openly, bearing names, uniforms, and recognized command structures has declined. Although, I must admit, in recent times, social media has started showing a return to this phenomenon. Third, election security planning has improved because there's a coordinated effort among security agencies who work in tandem as one group of persons wishing to achieve a particular singular goal. I must also say that election security planning, though has improved, it came with public awareness of the law and its provision, which has grown mainly through civic education, sustained media attention. Today's Ghanaians can easily identify a vigilante group than they could have done some years back, say 2019. There is a clear signal to vigilante groups or sponsors that the state has absolutely no room for organized political violence, and that organizing, sponsoring, funding, and equipping vigilante group has personal criminal liabilities. At this stage, let me add that I am very selective in my word as a unifier, so that people do not go and misquote me. I am saying this because of a clip I watched recently in TikTok, where 3 students were writing examination, and then the question was posed, can you name one of the civil rights activists in Black America? The first person knew it. He said Martin Luther King. And the next man behind him asked him, what is the answer? He said, Martin Luther King. The third person asked, what was the answer? He says, Martin Okoluti Kingsway. Communication, as it's passed along, changed its contents. And when it comes to security, it is very important to appreciate exactly what is said. However, we must not mistake reduced visibility of these groups as complete eradication. A vigilante group is a vigilante group, regardless of its name, uniform, or publicity. We are very much aware that, one, some groups are rebranding as internal security teams, volunteer task forces, or community security initiatives. Two, others have dissolved into looser and less visible networks that are more complex to track. But if our ability to track people on social media is anything to go by, a word to a wise is enough. Again, mobilization has moved online on social media, encrypted chats, local disputes, private security arrangements, or other informal channels. I do admit prosecutions under the Act has been limited, and at times legal processes has been slow. But we say sometimes justice grinds, but it grinds slowly. But let us know that the law exists, and it shall be enforced fairly without fear nor favor. If anybody is in doubt of our resolve to keep Ghana peaceful, please kindly check our record for the past 2 years. Sometimes, when enforcement appears weak, selective, overly delayed, deterrence suffers. Nevertheless, the law must be constantly and fairly enforced. My third thematic area, strategic consideration. Depoliticization and enforcement. The credibility of the Act 999 can be challenged by what it prohibits and how it is enforced. Enforcement should never be perceived as favoring one group over the other. Operational decisions for vigilantes issues should be guided by intelligence assessments, evidence, and professional judgment. To achieve this, enforcement protocols should be standardized. Investigations should be evidence-based. Accountability mechanisms should be transparent. And relevant security personnel responsible for field operations and investigations should be professionally insulated from informal political interferences. My next thematic area, prevention before campaign season. The action is now. It is easier to prevent political violence before the main event, that is, elections. By the time campaign rallies are underway, in earnest, we are managing rather than containing, we are managing containment rather than genuine prevention. But we want to be proactive. So recruitment into violent groups commences months prior to the election. So we are already saying it. So security agencies set up. The law exists. Our early warning systems have already flagged this. We can only say that they shouldn't go to sleep and to keep us on our toes. Let me also say that these preventive measures must include intelligence mapping and stakeholder engagement at least 12 to 18 months before election, just as we are doing. Youth engagement and civic education must take place 9 to 12 months before elections. Active monitoring of political mobilization should be way underway 6 months prior to elections. Targeted preventive operations during the campaign period must be rapid. Rapid response and confidence building throughout the election period is also key. Involve those we are intending to protect in the protection process. Finally, we shouldn't forget our cherished doctrine of innocence before proven guilty. To the security personnel, I understand where I am trying to drag to, and I'm looking directly in the eyes of Director General Operations Police. My next thematic area, substantial and not ceremonial coordination. Let me take this opportunity to congratulate the leadership of all our security agencies for the coordinated nature in which you have approached all issues, especially starting from JIC, starting from the Inspector General of Police, the CDS, and all other service chiefs. Anytime something came up, the lead agency takes the lead, all others fall in line and put their resources at their disposal. This is the way to go. The successful prevention of election violence depends on the coordination and collaboration of the security services and relevant government structures. This means real-time intelligence sharing, joint operations, joint risk assessments. Allow me, what do you call it, technology. This means real-time intelligence sharing, joint operations, joint risk assessment, shared communication channels, simulation exercises, unified command arrangements when required by the operational circumstances. National security, the police service, armed forces. I use the police service because when it comes to election, they are the lead agency. Ghana Immigration Service, Prison Service, Bureau of National Intelligence. Please know they've gotten their name back, BNI, the National Commission of Civil Education, the Electoral Commission, and all other relevant stakeholders I might not have mentioned here, and institutions must collaborate and coordinate their efforts within their respective constitutional mandate timeously. My next thematic area, private security companies and community vigilante security initiatives. Communities have the legitimate role in protecting neighborhoods. Private security providers have a role to operate within the law, and traditional leaders, our revered chiefs, also have a role in helping maintain peace. However, genuine concern arises when organized groups assume cohesive functions reserved for competent state authorities. Community participation must be strengthened lawfully by state authority, not substituting it. Do remember, you operate under license as a private security company, and these licenses are subject to certain rules and regulations under the supervision of the regulatory authorities, and the license can be withdrawn. My next thematic area, democratic governance and public confidence. Enforcement of the Act 999 and the protection of our democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a teacher, so you won't sleep. And so you find me changing my tone, and then so that you keep alive, and then you don't go and say that the one who went and robbed Kingsway. Remember the story. Enforcement of Act 999 and the protection of our democracy are not competing objectives. They should complement each other to protect citizens' right to political participation, peaceful assembly, and freedom of expression. Vigilante violence narrows democratic space by intimidating citizens who wish to participate fully. Public confidence would depend on visible neutrality, timely enforcement, and consistent accountability by security agencies. Every Ghanaian must be able to enter an election with the confidence that the law would protect them equally, that institutions would act professionally, and that democracy will prevail peacefully. Another thematic area, a whole of society response. If you look at our Ghana national security strategy, the concept is that our security is a whole of a society approach. It did not leave it to the security agencies, nor did it leave it to the citizens. The national security strategy, which is currently under review, emphasizes a whole of society and a whole of government approach. No single institution can address political vigilantism alone. So I urge that security agencies, you must exercise your professional neutrality. Political parties, you must mobilize, but do not do it irresponsibly. Traditional leaders, your unique role in conflict resolution and prevention is invaluable to us. Religious leaders, your moral leadership shapes our conscience in ways that the statute or the law can do. The media, be responsible, accurate, and calm reporting can prevent tensions from escalating into violence, and also try to eradicate the belief that some have become journalistic mercenaries. I leave it at that. Civil society, continue investment in civic education remains one of our most powerful long-term tools of prevention. The National Peace Council, the National Security Secretariat have seen you at work. We can only say that continue, even as we partner you in bringing lasting peace to our country. And finally, to the citizens, particularly the youth of Ghana, your strength, talent, and energy belong to the national development, not organized political violence. These are a means to an end. The end is that there should be wealth, development, employment, education, social amenities for all. This is where our efforts should be geared towards. What is our suggested strategic way forward? Now let's summarize it. The way forward in 5 actionable priorities, which, if advanced and refined by my seniors and experts here, I'm sure by the end of the day, we will have a working mechanism to go by. 1, neutral enforcement, depoliticization of the implementation at every level from officers on the ground to agency heads signing of investigations. 2, early prevention should begin long before campaigns are officially launched. You have seen, like I said, limping dogs and Savannah bulldogs being announced everywhere. Don't wait. The door is there. Waiting is negligence on the part of security agencies. Intelligence leadership. Let us strengthen early warning systems so that risks are identified and mitigated before risks become a problem. Real-time coordination, no turf war, is a common goal. The common goal is Ghana. Everything else is secondary. Build visible, consistent accountability. Justice, they say, must be seen to be done. Be fair to all. In conclusion, and without boring you so much, to give the chairman the opportunity to work, Mr. Chair, distinguished guests, Ghana has earned a respected place in the international community as a stable democracy. We must not trade this position, not for anything, not for short-term gains. The enduring success of Act 999 will not only be measured by the disappearance of vigilante group, but how it is implemented, how people have faith in it, how people have faith in our institutions. I always say I believe in the establishment of institutions than personalities. You say, when so-and-so was in place, things were working this way. That is not the way to go. in building a democratic society. It must be that institutions are well established and entrenched to be able to enforce our rights when one day I retire and join my seniors here. So their president tells you how serious this situation is. With this, I say I thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm grateful to be before all of you, and I'm willing to learn. My doors are open for directions and advice. God bless us all.
Please put your hands together again for COP Osman Abdul Razak for that thought-provoking keynote address. And for the second thematic area, I'm sure to summarize the second thematic area is that if the people think they are smart, if they think they are fast, the security agencies are hurry up. I'm sure that's what you want to say. Put your hands together for him again, please. We now move from the law itself to the experience behind it, the political structures, party mobilization, security challenges, and then all the other conversations that can happen in relation to this topic. For the first session, we'll bring together institutional memory, academic research, and then security expertise to talk about a topic, strategic reflections on the Vigilantism and Related Offences Act 2019, Act 999, National Security and Democratic Governance. Before we welcome our panelists, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to introduce the man who will receive them into the conversation. We know that in our Ghanaian homes, when visitors arrive, the offering is the homeowner at home to receive them and then offer them drink or cola nut or something so that they would feel welcome. But before that, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the People's National Convention. Bernard Mona is here, as well as Samson Asakia Wingobit. Please put your hands together for them as well. And for this conversation, ladies and gentlemen, we have the right host to do the job. He's a familiar voice in Ghana and the media space. He's calm when he needs to be. In fact, he looks very calm, but he's probing when the moment demands it, and he's very capable of asking the extra question that will make you very uncomfortable. In fact, he has had his own share of intimidation, so he has personal experiences for conversations like this. And one thing that you need to know is that if he catches that you are being economical with the truth, you wouldn't like him. Please put your hands together. Let's welcome the moderator for the panel discussion, Umaru Sanda Amadou. Senior, you're welcome. And now that the host is in the house, I suppose that it's a good time to bring in the visitors. But they are not visitors in the real sense. Each of them is coming into the conversation with a very particular relationship with the subject that we're discussing this morning, and it's good to meet them. In the year 2000, Ghana went through something it had never experienced. And we'll project the profile of the first panelist onto the screen for you. But while that comes, in the year 2000, an elected government was handing over political power to an opposition party. And the man responsible for the national security portfolio at that time says that he helped oversee that historic transition. Fast forward, after the Ayawaso West Wogon by-election, he wrote publicly that Ghana had witnessed something bad and it could create a precedent for reprisal attacks and then threaten the stability of the country. His name is the Honorable Kofi Totobi Kwache. Please put your hands together for him. And he's one of Ghana's most experienced national security strategists, communication experts, and long-serving public statesman, possessing over 3 decades of executive leadership across transitions, intelligence management, and civic engagement. Just a few things for you to know about the Honorable Totobi Kwache. at Fijai Secondary School in the Western region, a young Tutubi Kwachi once suffered concussion while playing football. So while playing football, he was hit. And then the doctor who treated him told him that he's too skinny, he's not a football-looking person, so he should try something else. By the grace of God, he tried something else, and now we have him here. Honorable, thank you again for joining us. Our next guest did something interesting. Long before Act 999 was passed, before vigilantism became one of the biggest words in Ghana's political conversation, this next guest that we're talking about, his name is Professor George Mary Bob Miller. He went looking for people we often call party foot soldiers, and then he studied them, he interviewed them. He asked why young people become aggressive political activists, and his research pointed to things we are still discussing today. In fact, he developed research specifically on what he called low-intensity electoral violence by party youth activists. Now, this means that he isn't approaching vigilantism as a commentator. He has actually researched the subject, researched the political structures and the incentives, everything that can go into the conversation, from party foot soldiers, electoral violence, to a fascinating subject. As part of his research, he studied something interesting, and he published it. When I was reading about him, I saw it at the Birmingham University, something. He studied something called invocation of political cases. Invocation of political cases. Informalization of party politics in Ghana. So yes, this man has literally studied cursing in Ghanaian politics. Say Ghanaian politics in the Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. Let's make welcome Professor George Mary Bob Miller. Our next panelist, he has seen Ghanaian politics from a vantage point of view that few people can claim. He joined the security services in 1968 and went on to serve under 7 different governments. His name is the Honorable Francis Kweku Poku. But here's an interesting part. Before all of that, he was simply a student at Legon, where his contemporaries included people who would later become presidents of Ghana, including John Evans Atta Mills and Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. So this gives him a rather unique lens on how political relationships, competition, and the national security have evolved over generations. He has a favorite food. He says it is apim and kontomire stew. And then when it comes to exercise, the exercise that the Honorable Francis Kweku Poku likes to do is just to walk. His exercise is walking. Please make welcome the Honorable Francis Poku as he walks onto the stage. The last name that we're introducing this morning for the first part of the discussion is bringing field experience and then strategic insight into this conversation. He is a security and a defense analyst, and his career has taken him from military command and peacekeeping operations to policy and research, and you can find all of that on the profile there. There are people who write books in the world. There are people who write books in Ghana. This man has also written extensively on peacekeeping, conflict management, military affairs, and then African security. In fact, he remains a prominent voice in Ghana's public discourse on defense and national security. One of the many things that stand out when it comes to this man is that he wrote a book, and that book that he wrote ended up in a war crimes courtroom. During the trial of former Liberian President Charles Taylor, prosecutors actually put extracts of this man's book on ECOMOG and the Liberian Civil War to Taylor during cross-examination. Please put your hands together and make welcome Colonel Festus Abwaji, retired. Ladies and gentlemen, the team is set. The moderator is ready. And my job at the moment is that. Senior, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning, and thank you, everybody. If I can have the technical team help me with the microphones, or because I'm not tech savvy. So, let's see. Okay, can you just... Okay. We're going to do something we do in the studio. They call it testing mic 1 and 2. So, respectfully, if you can say 1, then the next person says 2. Then we see if your sound is good. So, Uncle, I'll start with you. They cannot hear him. Sound, please come and do something. I think there's a little challenge, but they'll fix it. Otherwise, we can just use the handheld mics. If yes, can you say something?
2.
Good. Yours is good. Uncle, yours is.
1.
Is it audible?
1.
Can we hear him? Great.
1.
Thank you. Yes, so you are on. Yes, sir. Senior. Okay, he is off. He is off, so kindly check his on for me.
Two.
Good. All right. Please check for me. It's
working.
You're good. All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. It's an honor and privilege to moderate this high-level panel discussion. These are my fathers, my uncles. And so when the chairman said earlier that I'll grill some people, I knew I can't do it. Everybody knows their level. So my level, it's not everybody I can grill. And this panel is definitely not a panel I can grill. But we're going to have a conversation on the theme, Strategic Reflections on the Vigilantism and Related Offenses Act 2019, Act 999, National Security and Democratic Government or Governance. Now what we're going to do is that I'm going to give each of the panel members 7 minutes to give us their own assessment of this vigilantism bill, which became an act, which is a law that we've been practicing for the past 7 years. So I want to just get 7 minutes each from them, perspectives. After that, I ask 1 or 2 follow-up questions, and then we'll bring this session to an end. So I would want to start from my immediate right. Former National Security, former Minister for Information, and several other portfolios. We want to hear from you. This Act 999 that we passed, it was supposed to cure something. Has it been cured? Is it in the right path? Should we have even done an act like that or not? 7 minutes, your views, reflections, and perspectives. Yes, you can just speak, yes. 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 It's off? Okay. Okay, I think that would be better. Yep.
First of all, let me thank the organizers for inviting me to be part of this conversation this morning. And it's good to see some of my old colleagues. Anytime I'm in the company of Mr. Francis Poku and Honorable Kandapa, I remind them that we are the ministers of national security in the Fourth Republic, and that I'm the senior one. So it is good that I am the first to speak on this occasion, even though I concede that Mr. Francis Poku, when I was a student leader, he was the head of Special Branch, Greater Accra. And I don't know the number of times he tried to catch me when we were doing the aluta of those days. I met him those days, spoke to him, I shared with him the concerns that we had as a student movement and as youth. And I took a liking to him. So if I ended up in national security, interested in national security, he was one of the people I learned a few tricks from that you can look that you can look in somebody's face, he'll be your friend, but still attempt to catch him. Distinguished guests, on 4th of February 2019, in the aftermath of the Ayawaso West by-election and the emerging confusion, the violence, I wrote a letter an open letter to the President of the Republic, President Nana Akufo-Addo, and I was concerned about what had happened. Not because that marked the start of political vigilantism or violence in Ghana, but I was worried about the level of escalation that we saw on that day. And I raised serious questions, and I also asked that the President might consider setting up a commission of inquiry to go into the events of that day. When the letter came out that morning, in the evening, there were some radio programs, and I was the toast of against people. People really were set up to come and bash me, reminding me that in our time, in PNDC, etc., other things have happened. And I said, that is beside the point. Anyway, the next day, I received a call from the presidency, and I was asked, would I agree or would I be comfortable with the appointment of Mr. Emil Short as chairman of the committee of inquiry that I had asked for. I told the person, the emissary, that I had no opinion. I had stated what I thought was important in those circumstances that should be done. In any case, that evening, an announcement was made by the formation of the Short Commission of Inquiry. I just hoped at that time that it was not a knee-jerk reaction. But I said, we'll give it, we'll look at it with open mind and see what happens. And so I was a little disappointed when the short report came out. Quite a number of the recommendations were not accepted. One particular recommendation, which was that the security agencies, or the prosecution of the person who assaulted a member of parliament, I will not mention names. And the reason why it was said that it was not, that prosecution was not going to be possible was that the member of parliament had engaged in provocative acts. And so that cancelled the slaps that he received. And I thought that was very unfortunate. And I thought generally, the way the government took the white paper and literally expunged or did not agree with many of the recommendations, did not augur well for whatever it was that was intended to be achieved. I must say, though, that there was one recommendation in the report that talked about synchronizing the election security arrangements so that at election time, the security agencies will have a clear or provide a clear framework for how the security agencies intended or would intend to manage the elections of that, for that year. I didn't see it happen in the year 2020, but I must say that in 2024, I saw clear manifestations that that particular part of the recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry had been taken seriously by the security agencies. And I must commend the Election Security Task Force that was headed by the Ghana Police for a yeoman's work that they did for that election. Despite the challenges that they had, there were other actors who were also pretending to be providing security, but that was outside the framework of that which had been established by the Election Security Task Force. So, the question is now, let me try and follow my thoughts. Since the passage, so after the Commission of Inquiry report, then we had the Vigilante Act 999 that was passed. I don't know whether there was much consultation. I didn't follow it very much. But when it was passed, I thought that it would do something by way of helping to ensure that the elections, any future elections, will not encounter the same situation that we were involved in at Ayawasu. Okay. Now, the question that one can ask is that in the Vigilante, the Act 999, about 26 groups were identified. So the question I ask then is that, have the 26 groups vanished, or they are still in existence. Ahead of the 2024 elections, security analysts reported a substantial increase in groups falling within the scope of Act 999 from the 27 groups originally identified to estimates of, they said they estimated about 72 groups. And some have reportedly re-emerged under formerly lawful entities as private security companies, political escorts, etc., etc. So it looks like for many of them, the functions have changed. The shape has changed, the functions have changed, but they are still in existence. A few days ago, sometime last week or so, was a news report of the formation of a group called the Lions. I will not add what follows because I don't want to sound partisan. They said it was the Lions, so. And somebody who claimed to be the founder of the group, one doctor something, came out and said, oh, this group was going to operate within the ambit of Act 999, which is that if you form a group that intends to help community policing, etc., etc., you will not be on the wrong side of the law. I think that the National Security Coordinator alluded to it. Then I said to myself, sometimes this is the beginning of the problem. When we know that the real intention of the people who have formed that group is nothing about community. If you are forming a group for community policing, you will not attach it to a political party because every community has different political actors or persons living there. So if it is for the vigilante to enhance security in a community, it has to reflect. But if it is coming from a particular political party, then you have to watch it very carefully. So it happened that after the passage of 999, we still had many political groups. As I said, the researchers say there are about 72 of them that emerged. Fast forward, Ablekuma. Is it Ablekuma North? Yeah, the rerun of the Ablekuma North. When it happened, the same set of story, the same story. Unidentified men arriving in pickups, some slaps, some this, some that. And I asked myself that the caution that I gave in the letter that I wrote to President Akufo-Addo, that if we don't act timeously and forcefully, we will put in place something that will cause future reprisals and revenge. And I think that many people, when you ask them, they will say that, well, Ablekuma North was a revenge for what happened at Ayawa's request. As a country, we cannot continue on a cycle of revenge and reprisal. And that is why I think that this forum is important, for us to revisit the Act 999 to see to what extent has it helped solve or curb the problem of vigilantism. And if not, what are the elements that we need to review and advise government for for enactment so that it strengthens that the purpose for which Act 999 was set up. And so I think that this forum is important. Okay. It is timeless. It's in that you do it well ahead of time. I also think that aside the Act, the security agencies, and I'm happy that the National Security Coordinator is here. In the time of Honorable Kandapa, he kept his doors open. He instituted regular meetings with political parties so that outside the framework of the Act itself, his own arrangements helped to bring the temperature down. And I would commend his effort to the current administration of this thing, that those meetings with the political parties continue, and that it will enhance the letter and spirit of Act 999 or whatever new form it emerges. Okay. I'll end my initial comments at this stage.
Thank you. Thank you, Uncle Tobikwachi. I want us to go to the historian who understands the African continent. Reflections on Act 999, how we got there and where we are now. If you could lift the microphone out of your ear, put it around your ear, let's see if it will help. Okay. Technical, can I just give him my mic? I think it's, are you comfortable with that?
Comfortable
okay, please go ahead, yes.
Right, thank you very much, and let me thank the organizers for inviting me to this very important platform, and to allow me to share the same platform with a great statesman that I've admired as a schoolboy. I told a cousin that I was going to share the same platform with Mr. Tobikwachi. He said, really? Because when we were growing up, we used to see you as Minister for Information. And Festus, Colonel Festus Abwaji is a scholar and a military man that I've admired. For Mr. Poku, yes, all of that. So thank you so much for bringing me from Kumasi to be part of this dialogue. I'd like to start my reflections on where Honorable House ended. To look at democracy as it is today. That in terms of democracy as a political system, that it has served Ghana very well. But globally, democracy is in decline. We talk of democratic decline. We talk of democratic backsliding. And for us, what we are having now today is very proactive. That yes, Ghana is not immune. Even though Ghana has always been described as a model democracy, when you look at places where they've had challenges, their system too had worked, but something didn't work. From very advanced democracies like the US, we've seen the rise of populist leaders, East Europe. All of those are things that for us and for this audience is appropriate that we have to protect what we have built over these past 3 decades. And that reflecting on Act 999 is very important and timely. We've seen a place like Zambia. Zambia had recent elections. Zambia, like Ghana, is a very peaceful country. They've had 10 of us, they've conducted elections, but it was violent. The opposition leader's private residence was invaded. His supporters were manhandled. Of course, in that context and in many places, it's always obvious that there's a gentleman pointing towards me, I don't know. Is there a problem? Thank you. That the incumbents always play a major role. Now, to come home to our country, Ghana, I've argued that Ghana, we have been democratizing with violence. But since we embraced multi-party politics from the early 1950s till date, what we've succeeded in doing is to democratize alongside violence. So we've come to accept violence as part of our political journey. But violence in the democratic state is not the norm. It signals that something is not working. And that is where we as policymakers, as academics, as political parties, we need to have this dialogue, which is very important. And thank you for the very elaborate introduction. That yes, having studied political parties in Ghana, political party activists, I still study them and monitor them. The question of political vigilantism and its impact on the state it's something that the major political parties, the minor parties, they all admit that it's not good for Ghana's democracy. The challenge has always been that, can we cure this with a law? And for me, Act 999, my reading of it is that, yes, it was a reaction to a major problem, a problem that has been with us. The earlier speakers gave examples of violence at by-elections and other places. So it's something that has always been with us. But I also, West Wagon embarrassed all of us. And as Ghanaians, we are good at pretending. So we reacted quickly. Of course, the state needed to find some solution and address citizens' concerns. So the act is an outcome of party contest. And the underlying factors that gave birth to that what as the 70 we can make this law very effective is relevant. I will end here. Thank you very much.
Okay, so would it be fair to say you have coined the term democratic violence or violent democracy? Which one is it?
Not me. Yeah, what I'm using.
Someone who preempted violence many years ago when he came up with the idea that youth unemployment was a national security issue that resulted in the National Youth Employment Program, which has changed so many names now to become the YEA. I also remember somewhere in 2007, something happened. I will not talk about that. Honorable Francis Boku, it's your turn. We want to hear your reflections on the Vigilantism Act as passed. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Sandra. It was reassuring to see the chief imam here and also to see some of the personalities this morning. Democracy is stabilized through certain personalities in our society. Behind the scenes, there are individuals that we call upon at moments when we are getting close to crisis. And I like the use of how did you turn it? We're living with violence. See, and if we were to go behind the scenes to inquire into our past elections, I always use the word near misses, and that is true. There have always been last-minute interventions by certain personalities that have averted crisis in this country. And once the problem is over, we forget. And we've lived with this. I remember in 1976, I sent out a report to the agencies warning of bloodshed in this country. I can point out where we met And everybody came up to me, why are you alarming the whole country? To cut a long story short, in 1979, we had the Rawlings coup. And when Namfuri and I were interrogating Rawlings on the night when he embarked on the failed coup in May 1979, he told us the whole story about what was happening within the military. So we lived with events, and when they are over, we forget that we are coming through crisis. When we go through the history of this country, what happened in 79, the executions of generals who had not been tried, and we see things happening all over again, we get really alarmed. And I'm very pleased that we have a gathering like this. It is to alert us to make the right analysis as to where we are going. So we have the best. This Vigilante Act 999 was a knee-jerk reaction, because so far as I'm concerned, within 24 hours, the system should have known what had happened, because those involved were within national security. We had a minister there, we had a coordinator with the IGP, who all declined knowledge of what had happened. So what was the problem? Of course, I know that commissions sometimes give you a breathing space. But where all the facts are known within 24 hours, where are we going for a commission? So far as I'm concerned, the president had all the means and information to have acted very quickly without going to a commission. On the Vigilante Act, of course, some of you have worked behind the scenes with presidents, and you know that sometimes you have to act quickly because of the public reaction. But I think then we have a law that is very difficult to enforce. So far as I'm concerned, the law doesn't address the problem of the land guards. We only have to look at the responsibilities of the constitutional organs of state. The executive, that has responsibility for national security. We have the courts. If prospective land litigants are taking the law into their hands, it is because they have no redress in the courts. Let's do a survey and find out the number of cases, land cases that are pending. Let's look at the abuses of the interlocutory system. You want to develop a land for farming, whatever, and there are certain places where you can go for an injunction. 5 years, we have injunction. So it has frustrated your designs. And that is why people are going for vigilantes. That is the only place where you can get a redress. So let's look at the constitutional organs of state and see whether they are working. Once these are addressed, then we can look at the act. Because how are you going to enforce the provisions of this law? You cannot. Because to be able to succeed, you need a very effective investigative strategy. The existence of the groups, the operations of the groups, to be able to establish a reasonable evidence to go to court. We're talking about neighborhood watch. You can look out and protect your property. But if you spill over and use violence, you are caught by the law. So the law is unenforceable. And if you've been in the security agencies, you've been police investigator, as I used to be at some point in charge of the fraud squad, you know that these cases, you cannot establish the evidence that will convict anybody. Look at the provisions. So it was a knee-jerk reaction, and we have to go back soberly. Maybe we can expand the use of LI 157 regarding private security organizations. Fortunately, we have very experienced military officers and police officers who are on retirement we can encourage them to set up private security organizations so that, like they do in the UK and other countries, they can help with the security guard situation in the country. And in any case, there are other laws. Act 350, the police, the law establishing the police. We can look at that to able to exploit, because most of these cases, in any case, are criminal offenses. And they could have been used to resolve the problem that the act sought to address. And I can sympathize with the president at the time because he was under pressure because of actions that has been taken within his outfit. So let's look at the law again. It is never going to work. And you have the mandatory sentence of 10 years just by protecting your property but overreacting. So look at the provisions and whether you are ready to send somebody to court to be sentenced to 10 years imprisonment minimum, and even if you are holding anything conceived as a weapon, it's 15 years up to 25 years. And that is why the police will not even try to enforce that law. So this is a gathering that must come out with straightforward answers, respond appropriately, because we are dealing with a situation that will never work. It has never worked, and as my friend Tutubi is saying, that there is some upsurge, and we have to identify the upsurge, and we have to accept that that law will never work in this country. Thank you.
So I just have a quick follow-up. So the structures make it necessary for people to use the vigilantes or land guards because your land is not protected and you need that. And so is it a suggestion that we didn't have to enact a new law, but we should have just relied on Act 29 and all the other relevant acts we have which help us fight crime?
Well, we could have looked at the existing laws and tried to adapt them to be able to respond to the crisis. As I said, I believe the president may have been under pressure to come out with something. And when you look at the provisions, no law enforcement agency will try to enforce it. 10 years just for trying to protect your property. And the provisions have said that I have been in the police before as an investigator, and I know that you cannot apply the provisions realistically.
Thank you so much. You may just hold. So during the Ayawaso West Wogon by-election and all the issues that led to the enactment of the law, one of the key voices we had in the media is Kenneth Sosabwaji, retired. He's our go-to person as media people, as a security analyst. You were here when the law was contemplated and when it was birthed, and now it is, 7 years old. What's your reflection? Did we get it right from the onset, or we lost everything ab initio?
Thank you, moderator. Let me express sincere thanks to National Security Secretariat through Richard Japa to the coordinator. At least it's given me the opportunity to meet him face to face. I'd always seen him in the media spaces. So thank you very much. I find myself as the only foot soldier among this panel, 2 national security coordinators, a minister plus a professor. The act was passed, Ayawaso West Wogon was 31st January 2019, if I'm correct. Yeah. The act was passed in August 2020. Is that right, please? Then we went for elections. In fact, in 2020, we had voter registration exercise. And in a book that I've written, a very small book, 2020 voter registration exercise turned out to be the most dangerous, the most fatal since independence. Then we went for the elections, 2020. And we know what happened. I was just having a conversation with the Honorable Kandapa, this Western Togoland issues, anonymous persons in uniforms, both police, military with arms, all over the places. And nobody knew who had armed them, who had given them the orders, deployed them, who gave them the rules of engagement to go around killing innocent people who were waiting to cast their votes. So if you look at the sequence of events, the act failed right in the year after it was enacted. Because if the act was going to be effective in 2020, we should have seen its effect on society. That was not happening. So let me put forward a proposition that I wrote here, which might be a bit uncomfortable for some of us. I'm arguing that, like some of the speakers who have preceded me, that Ghana does not have a vigilantism problem because we don't have laws. And I want us to be very clear about that. We don't have a vigilantism problem because there are no laws. In other words, there are laws, but the laws don't help to protect people against vigilantism. Ghana has a vigilantism problem because it has chosen deliberately, not inadvertently, not to consistently enforce the laws it has already enacted. And I think the executive director of Election Watch pointed to that. We are being deliberate that we have passed a law. And as the Honorable Francis Poku said, we're only passing the law to tick a box, not intending that after the enactment, anybody who ran foul of the law was going to be dealt with according to the law. Only yesterday, the Minister for Interior, during his press engagement, mentioned that some individuals who violated Ghana's stability 2020-2024 were being hunted or hunted, that 7 or so of them were before court, and the name that I think you mentioned, this double man who was selling used phones or whatever around Circle, was on the run or is on the run. The question we need to ask is, if the act is working, why has it taken us from 2019 to 2026 that we still cannot find the perpetrators or some of the perpetrators, besides the egregious disregard by the government of the day to address the recommendations that the eminent Emil Short addressed. And I believe Crosby alluded to the gentleman who was shot with 4 children, probably not going to be able to work for life. If that is how we think we want to operate with the Act, then I think my proposition is right, that the problem is not that we don't have laws. The problem rather is that we don't want to work with the laws, or we don't want the laws to work. And apart from everything anybody here says today, the reason why the laws are not working is not technical, it's political. the two political actors, and we need to say, the two main political actors, experientially, have been the only ones who have been able to govern this country since the advent of this constitution, appear to have a sort of gentleman's agreement, a club mentality, that I will not deal with you, so that when you are in power, you don't deal with me. I mean, there is no way of defending the attitude and the mindset and the philosophy of our political actors other than saying that because each party has members who run foul of the law, we'll go soft with you. And when you come to power, you also go soft with us. So, the Honorable Hawa Kumsna I haven't met before. In her days, became a Rambo, carrying a pistol and firing all over the places. What happened to her? The law did not deal with the Honorable Hawa Kumsna. So, people were grieving. And when those people had a chance, at Ablekuma North, if I'm not mistaken, they also wreaked vengeance and went after her, knowing that their party was in power. And when their case went to court, did the charges, the charge sheet, cite violations of the Act 999? Or is cited, as Minister Francis Poku has said, existing laws? The reality of what is happening is that the Act has become redundant. All that the institutions of the state are doing, particularly the police, are acting with the existing laws as enshrined in the criminal code and other offenses, not with the Act 2, Act 999. Act 999 deals only, its implementation, whatever there is, I believe the second panel will talk about, deals only with full soldiers. Double is a full soldier. Who took Double to Asuchare to train him for how many days? Who enrolled him at the National Security Outfit, where he didn't have any business? For my understanding, coordinator, with due respect to you, this is a policy development, policy analysis, policy development establishment in order to advise government. What was Double doing at that place? That he now is emboldened to go out to Ayawaso and take the law into his own hands. And the state does not deal with him. And now a new government comes and says that I'm going to deal with you. We are waiting to see whether Double, when he's found, will be charged under the provisions of 999, or whether he will be charged under the existing Criminal Offences Act. And if he is charged under the Criminal Offences Act, then the point I'm making is that Act 999 was not necessary. That's the point that I think my predecessors have made. Now, if we want Act 999 to be relevant, then let's deal with the political actors, i.e., there's, what do you call them, the secretaries or the national chair, those who hold political offices within the parties. Let's bring them together and not go after the small boys and the small girls, who act on their behalf.
Thank you, Kenneth. Thank you so much. I have just one round of questions to go, but before then, the last two speakers have suggested to us that one, the Vigilante Act was a knee-jerk reaction. Two, it's a toothless bulldog. Three, you didn't use that word, but that's what I surmise. Three, it is an unnecessary law. We did not need it. I want to hear from the two of you whether you agree that the law was not necessary, or is it the case that the law is unimplementable? What's your thinking on this? I want to start with you, sir. Yes.
think that at the very onset, I give a backdrop to the commission, how the Commission of Inquiry came, how the recommendations were set aside, basically, and how, when the pressure was still on, the Act, the 999 was passed. And I said that, I put that in a context that it was all about a knee-jerk reaction. And since that time, it's true, nothing has happened. One of the points I was going to make, and I forgot, is that if we want to really test the efficacy of 999, the recommendations of the short district, even though the government set aside the recommendations of a white paper does not necessarily mean that the recommendations of a report cannot be prosecuted. So that could be, well, be this thing. But then, this guy, what's it called, Double, he's being pursued not under 999, but under something else. So I can understand the sentiments that it's probably the Act 999 has failed to provide any clear answers.
Okay, all right.
But that, I can understand it, but I also believe that a law that exists can be improved to serve the purpose of society.
All right, Prof, let me hear from you too.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. It's important for a democracy that is evolving to have laws that would address current problems. So for me, yes, I agree that it was a reaction by the government, and these are politicians that are in power with the mandate of the people, so they needed to act. My problem with the law is that it put too many things together. Like Honorable Francis Poku said about land guardism. It has always been with us. So that should be treated as, let me call it a social crime. And our existing laws should be able to address the issue of land guardism. Political violence should come under political crimes. Okay? But the evolving nature of our party politics, especially with the two dominant political parties, all of us who have lived in Ghana, we've seen a pattern. Every time there's change of government, yes, like Kennel said, and now I make the case that the political parties, especially when they're opposition, they keep a record of what happens to them, their members. All right. Immediately there's change of power, they say, let's make the grassroots happy. Let's give them something small. Okay. So for Honorable Howard Kumsin, a veteran politician, she knew very well that getting into that space, they will want to teach you a lesson, at least to appease their base. That she had power, and this is what she did. This is what we're also going to do. For us, yes, to answer your question directly, the law is relevant for a very competitive political system like Ghana, a two-dominant party system where the winner takes it all. What we haven't discussed is the political economy of elections, all right? Why do you think that foot soldiers are willing to die for a political party to come to power? That we have to address. And once we haven't addressed that, it's a phenomenon that will keep occurring. Right.
Thank you so much. Now, because we are here to discuss the Act 999 and find ways of making it workable, we cannot prescribe it here in this room. So what we can do, and what I'm going to ask the panel to, by way of last question, the law is on our books or it's on our statutes, and we have not prescribed it. It's a law that is supposed to be used by the people who do the prosecution, even though it's imagine that we rarely or seldom use our law. I want to start with you, Uncle Francisco. How do we make it more effective, the Act 999? Should we take it back to Parliament and insert some things and delete some things? Or should we tell the police that henceforth when you arrest somebody, if it is land guardism, deal with them under the 999 and not go under Act 29, which is the Criminal Offences Act? How do we fix and save this law so that our democratic institutions will be protected? That's a question for all of you, starting with Mr. Poku.
Well, fortunately for me, the police officer in charge of Operations is here with us.
He will be on the next panel.
And we have to ask him, why is that law not being enforced? And he was going to be very practical. Because if somebody is trying to protect himself, that is a lawful action. But if he goes to get other people to help him overpower the person, he has committed a crime under Act 999. So you go through the provisions and find that really police officers and law enforcement officers are also human beings. How are we going to send this person to 10 years imprisonment or 15 years if he's holding not even a knife? Well, it could be a knife, but other objects adapted to defending himself. That is a crime, and with a mandatory sentence of 10 years. So, the realistic thing to do is to go back to the law enforcers and find out their reaction to this law.
All right, thank you so much. Colonel, how do we fix the law and make it more effective, useful to our society?
Thank you very much. I have the notes that I prepared. About five.
Can you lift your mic a bit?
About 5 areas or aspects that we must pay attention to. Well, let me start off from the term that Professor used, the political economy of vigilantism, and the question rhetorical that the Honorable Minister raised. Now, if COP, Director General Operations, so professional, so courageous, that he goes around arresting people and jailing them, you think he will live to see the office of the IGP? He might not. So what the academics, the professors are telling us that a lot of our problems in this country are of a political nature, and they relate to the system of governance that we are running, the winner takes all. So that nobody wants to sacrifice, become a hero for a state that does not recognize or will not recognize his or her contributions. If we don't change the political system, which also relates to political party campaign financing, we'll be dancing around in circles. Because the office is so attractive, people are now prepared to spend as much as possible, including going to fetishes. And Honorable, I hope you will bear with me. I haven't got the evidence, but do human sacrifices and other sacrifices in order to have access to power. Therefore, nobody must stand in their way. That is the mentality of our political class. So I'm emphasizing institutional changes. And the first institutional requirement is the Section 10 of the Act that requires the Minister of Justice to elaborate regulations. Since 2019, what are the regulations? They don't exist. And yet we've always had ministers of justice in the forms of attorney generals. That is one of the places where we need to start the debate about reinvigorating the act. Then enforcement. I will not belabor that, because the next panel is going to do with it. As far as I think we can argue, enforcement has been zero, including from the apex of power, which takes a Commission of Inquiries report and rubbishes it, throws away whatever it wants, and even the few that are left, damages, reparations, or whatever, compensation, even that the state does not, oblige its responsibilities. Then transparency. We need to find mechanisms, maybe what the Honorable Totobiko mentioned, that currently we don't have a Minister of National Security, but we have the coordinator. To the coordinator, build upon the practice of the Honorable Kandapa and transparently invite the political actors, not only the two, but all of them, severally who have been mentioned, to sit in a room and honestly discuss what the issues are. That might help. But if we don't know what the other parties are thinking, and we're only bantering it out in the media spaces, that might not help. And the last point is prevention. As a people, indeed as Africans, we are more inclined to walk steeply into disaster and then try to find remedies for the disaster. We all know what is wrong with our society, but we are not prepared to invest in simple measures that will prevent those disasters. That's what is happening. And if I may end on this point, it may not appear as if it's related. But when you sit back and you watch how political parties are behaving, the two, from vigilantism, among other mechanisms, the security services have become the place where you now, feed your foot soldiers into the services. That's what is happening. And I'm mentioning it here, I've said it elsewhere, that the last stage of that is now recruitment has become a ministerial portfolio. Well, I never remember in my short life in Ghana, any Minister of Defense or Minister of Interior, not even Chiefs of Defense Staff or IGPs, elaborating measures for recruitment. But today, as we speak, it is a ministerial portfolio. The question is why? Why? Because the political parties have captured that space that we call recruitment into security services. Why? Because they cannot satisfy their full soldiers. And if they don't feed them into the security services, then of course the full soldiers will be allowed to run riot, and then we'll end up with more problems. So these are the few comments that I want to, not specific provisions, but generally some, is it theoretical, if I may put it that way? I thank you.
Thank you so much, Colonel. Are we allowed to? Yes, I wanted to hear from Prof. Then I'll make you the last speaker. So, Prof, how do we save the law and our democratic institutions?
From the discussions that we've been having so far, for me, it's clear that the law is a political law. So we can address the law with a political solution. Why is the law not enforceable? Because if the law is going to work, it's going to affect political parties. And political parties are concerned about their members being prosecuted. That even the party foot soldier who is involved in violence will tell you that somebody said we should do this. All right. So yes, the good thing for us in Ghana is that because the law was passed by the former administration, the current administration with its reset agenda can use that template to take a second look at the law. All right. So for me, that would be the only way. That yes, it's not enforceable because of the politics that is surrounding it, and that if you take a political solution to refine the law between those two major political parties that have governed. Of course, all political parties are relevant in our context, and if they come together and discuss that, for me, I still go back to the point. There is something that is fueling violence, and that is that these party members see political power as the only way out. So they will do whatever it takes to get whoever is their patron into power. And if we can diffuse the importance of the office that these political parties are pursuing and look at other options, it's not new. Others have proposed that we should change the political system, that proportional representation, okay, would dilute the test and all the keen participation that we've seen between the two major political parties, and that to be aware. Other than that, we'll just be going around in circles, I'm afraid.
Thank you so much, Prof. Honourable Minister, you have the last word.
Okay, thank you very much. I've heard the concerns by my two colleagues about the inclusion of land guards in the Act. I want to prefer an explanation, and it is that I think that the framers of the law realize that most of the people who end up constituting the vigilante groups are land guards by profession, and that is a fact. You know, so they transpose from land guardism into vigilantism. Now, these same land guards have constituted themselves into security guards, protecting big men, including traditional authorities. And I agree that focusing attention separately on dealing with that land guardism will be an important factor in providing some space for peace in this country. The other point I want to make is that in South Africa, they had a national peace accord. Similarly, in Kenya, after the 2008 election violence, they had an accord. The point about the accord was not just the existence of the act, but commitments, measurable commitments, and a machinery to enforce whatever it is that the law seeks to achieve. Act 999 does not have any of those enforceable mechanisms. It does not have any machinery for measuring, for establishing, or making sure that the commitments that are reached are actually determinable and enforceable. So I would like to suggest that rather than throw the law out completely, that we have time. Today may not be the best time, the day to go into all of these things, but it's a conversation that we must have, that the law needs revamping, having regard to the fact that it has not been served the purpose much. How can we improve on it? My problem is that once you say that the law is unenforceable, the people who are doing the vigilante right now will say, we have won the fight. And we'll have a problem on the ground. Let the law exist. There are many laws in the world from 1800 and something that have never been used, but they serve as deterrent. So it is very important that the law actually exists, but let us find a way of improving on it. My last point is that, yes, sometimes we put the onus of responsibility on the security agencies, etc., etc. But in terms of the implementation of the law, I ask myself, to what extent have the political actors worked to make sure that the letter and spirit of the law obtains or pertains? I don't think that we've done enough. 2 days ago, the Minister for Interior announced that one gentleman who is a suspect in a murder case has been elected unopposed.
He's contesting unopposed. Forms have been picked for him, and he's going to contest unopposed.
He has not been. He's going to contest unopposed in a constituency. I would expect a political.
He actually contested.
He has contested.
So he's elected.
Yes, he's been elected. I would expect the political leadership of the party, at the very onset, to have said, this is not possible, and scrap it. The same way that the announcement of the Lion something should have met with a reaction from the political leadership that this is not acceptable. Until we have leadership that can speak truth about these matters, we can come back and review the law and have the same result. The important thing is that we need to have a framework for elections that does not have to, every year, every election cycle, fear the possibility of violence because we have come to see it as part of the political process. That cannot sustain our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we can give them a round of applause. Very rich, very brilliant. And I have a message for you panelists from a very respected member of our society, Chairman of the Council of State, former Speaker of Parliament, Professor, did I say Professor? Right Honorable Speaker Duajaho. He says, I should say to you that the panelists are doing very well. Political party financing is a very key issue. We should stop pretending as a nation. So that's a message that Speaker Duajaho has sent through that I just want to share with you. Now, before we came into this room, there was a plan to get a commitment from the political parties that they will not accept vigilantism. So the organizers invited the two chairmen of the two political parties, the major political parties. Forgive me. I know Bernard Mona will take me to court if I don't. He's chairman of PNC. Now, the expectation was that Johnson Asedun Ketia, chairman of the NDC, would join us. Unfortunately, organizers say he has not made it. Chairman Bute, acting chairman of the NPP, was scheduled to be in the room this afternoon. Organizers are saying he's not been able to make it. But there were two questions that were crafted to be asked and for commitments to be made. So I'm going to throw it out there. The first question, and this is a preamble, is we have observed the recent emergence of new informal groups and security details, including the Nage combatants, patriotic soldiers, and similar formations operating around political activities. Question to the NPP. Does the NPP endorse the creation and conduct of these groups? Are the activities of these units not a direct violation of the Vigilantism and Related Offences Act 2019? And what is your clear public message today to these groups and to the people of Ghana? Because Acting Chairman Bute is not here, if there's any executive member of the New Patriotic Party or senior member of the NPP who can do so for us, we can do so. Okay. I am told that I cannot defer the question because I was going to move the NDC one to the Honorable Edwin Nilante van der Poy, who is hoping to be chairman of the NDC. But Honorable Kandapa is saying to me not to do that.
Answers that question. He might lose his election.
Okay, there's an advice. Is there? Oh, okay. Chairman, I want to defer to you on this. Let me ask the MPP NDC question then, so that you can decide, give me advice on how to proceed. The question so there are two questions. One, can you state unequivocally to Ghanaians today that the NDC will not endorse, sponsor, or tolerate any illegal groups within your party that affront the Vigilantism and Related Offences Act 2019? Will you give a firm guarantee that state power would never be weaponized to protect or cover up any such actors? So, okay, former Minister for the Interior and Attorney General, Honorable Kumbo, yes, please. Thank you very much. I think the mic is off. Let me put it on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. For God's sake, I guess this dialogue is a confidence-building mechanism. And the idea of bringing in political parties to come and make commitments on something like this is a very, very slippery slope. Until you build the confidence around the issues that we are dialoguing now, it is too early to ask for political party commitment. That might be suitable for election watch. You want to add to your statistics of the number of successful activities you have had. But please, never, never introduce political parties at this stage. And I'll tell you why when the next panel is on.
Okay. Again, I represent the Honorable Chief of Staff as chairman for this occasion. I think your questions are perfect. I like them. They are great questions. And it's good that you have asked them. But I would ask that you leave it that way. Let the political parties answer, but not anyone here. The political parties have heard your questions. Let them deliberate over those, and let those questions direct the actions that they take going forward and what they are going to tell all of us as countrymen. Thank you.
I am just a child, and I've taken the advice of my fathers, and we shall proceed, because if I don't accept now, I'll be in trouble. Thank you so much for the advice, Chairman. Dr. Kumbo, thank you so much. In fact, Dr. Kumbo and the other team would be coming back for the next set of panel. I was scheduled to also take comments and questions from you, the audience. But what I think we should do is that when we finish with the next panel, then we can get a few more comments. National Coordinator has his hand up. This is a very difficult place for me to operate because I'm not allowed to go rogue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity. I think I will be doing a disservice if I don't bring this to the notice of the panelists. I skipped it because in my speech because I wanted this discourse to take place. If you look at Section 1, subsection 3 of the Act, it says this Act may be read together with relevant enactments, and in particular, the Criminal Offences Act 1960, Act 29, except that where the offense and the prosecution relates to vigilantism, the provision of this act shall apply. So it did take into consideration the prevailing laws already. That is the first one. The second one is my elder brother's advice. I'm always in contact with I call him Prof. Kandapa, but you don't put two wolves whom you have not fed and calmed yet in the same cage for peace talk. You, the peacemaker, will be torn apart. And that is the reason why, in the wisdom of the chairman, he did say this particular question, we are on an individual basis, we are in touch with them, and this is testing the waters, and further of this sort of engagement will come on. We would get there where we are able to bring everybody on board and then discuss as a country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So I take that under advisement, and at this stage, I would say the first panel discussion is over. We'll be taking a break, I've been advised, and we'll return for the second panel, during which we'll hear their perspectives and take questions from the audience. So I'm going to hand over back to the MC. I think he has a better announcement to give us. I am Omar Rusanda Amadou. It's been great coming your way. Thank you so much, sirs. You may please resume your seats.
Senior, thank you. Thank you so much. And there's no other better announcement than it is time for us to go and eat. We have maximum 10 minutes. So the food is good, but it's an opportunity for us to also interact amongst ourselves and build connections. That is better. But if you are able to put the food and the connections together, it is the best. So we have a maximum of 10 minutes to put some things in our stomachs and then exercise a little, stretch our legs, and then we're back for the second session. Thank you.